Boxing is more than fists flying and sweat dripping under bright lights. It is a story as old as humanity itself. It is a tale of survival, pride, and honor. From ancient warriors who fought for glory to modern legends who fought for something greater than themselves. Boxing has always been more than a sport. It is a mirror of society. It is a reflection of struggle. It is a celebration of resilience. Today we step into the ring of history to trace the story of boxing's coming of age. The journey from brutal beginnings to a disciplined art form. The fighters who turned raw combat into something timeless. The origins, fighting as survival. The story of boxing begins thousands of years ago, long before boxing gloves and referees. Combat was simply survival. Ancient carvings from Mesopotamia and Egypt show men squaring up with clenched fists. These are some of the earliest depictions of boxing. To those early societies, fighting was as natural as breathing. To fight was to prove strength, defend honor, and establish dominance. In ancient Greece, boxing was embraced as part of the Olympic Games as early as 688 BC. Back then, fighters wrapped their hands with leather straps, not for protection but to make their punches more devastating. There were no timed rounds, no weight classes, no mercy. The fight ended when one man could no longer stand. These contests were brutal, yet they were celebrated as the ultimate test of courage. To the Greeks, the boxer was not just a man, but a warrior. He embodied endurance and toughness. Rome carried that spirit forward, but with even more blood. Roman boxing often took place in arenas for the entertainment of crowds hungry for violence. Fighters sometimes wore metal-studded gloves that turned punches into deadly blows. These matches were not about skill or sportsmanship. They were about survival before a roaring audience. The brutality grew too much, and when the Roman Empire fell, organized boxing faded with it. But like any fighter knocked down, boxing was never truly out. The rebirth bare-knuckle brawls. Centuries later, boxing returned to the spotlight, this time in 17th century England. But this was not the noble Olympic sport of the Greeks. This was bare-knuckle boxing, raw and savage. Matches were held in taverns, marketplaces, and open fields, often with little or no rules. This was the era of prize fighting, where men fought for money and reputation. There were no weight divisions. Fighters often wrestled, punched, and gouged. The brutality was staggering, yet crowds from all walks of life came to watch. One man began to change that. James Figg, often called the father of modern boxing. In the early 1700s, Figg opened a fighting academy in London. He became the first recognized champion. He taught technique, emphasized skill, and helped turn boxing from a lawless brawl into something closer to an art form. By the mid-1700s, another figure, Jack Broughton, stepped in. After witnessing fighters killed in the ring, Broughton created a code of rules known as Broughton's Rules. These rules introduced the concept of a 30-second count when a fighter was knocked down. They banned hitting a man once he was on the ground. For the first time, boxing had structure. Still, bare-knuckle boxing remained violent, and fighters carried scars for life. But the seed of transformation had been planted. The Queensberry Revolution, boxing comes of age. The true turning point arrived in 1867 with the introduction of the Marquess of Queensberry rules. These rules forever reshaped boxing. Gloves became mandatory. Fights were divided into timed rounds. Wrestling was banned. For the first time, boxing was less about brute force and more about skill, endurance, and strategy. This was boxing's coming of age, the shift from raw spectacle to disciplined competition. Fighters had to master technique, footwork, defense, and timing. It was no longer only about who hit hardest. It was about who could outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver his opponent. With these changes came heroes who embodied the new spirit of the sport. John L. Sullivan, often called the last bare-knuckle champion and the first gloved heavyweight champion, bridged the old and the new. His charisma and power drew massive crowds. He made boxing a cultural phenomenon. The 20th century, the golden age of boxing. As the 20th century unfolded, boxing became one of the most celebrated sports in the world. This was the golden age when fighters became legends and matches became global events. In the 1920s and 30s, boxing was the sport of the people. Stars like Jack Dempsey electrified crowds with ferocious power. Joe Louis became a symbol of pride and hope. Louis was not just a champion. He was an American hero during a time of racial segregation and global conflict. His 1938 victory over German fighter Max Schmeling was more than a fight. It was a symbolic battle against Nazi ideology. Then came Sugar Ray Robinson. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of all time. Robinson combined speed, power, and elegance like no one before him. His dominance inspired generations. He set the standard for what boxing greatness looked like. By the 1960s and 1970s, boxing reached cultural heights with Muhammad Ali. Ali was more than a boxer. He was a global icon. His lightning-fast reflexes, his dazzling footwork, and his razor-sharp wit made him unforgettable. Beyond the ring, Ali stood for something bigger. He spoke against war, against racism, and for justice. His battles with Joe Frazier and George Foreman were not just fights. They were epic stories that defined an era. Ali's legacy showed that boxing could be more than sport. It could be a voice, a movement, a force for change. The evolution of modern boxing. Boxing continued to evolve through the late 20th century. Fighters like Mike Tyson brought raw ferocity into the spotlight. His knockouts were brutal and unforgettable. Others like Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, and Oscar de la Hoya showcased heart strategy and skill. In the modern era, Floyd Mayweather Jr. redefined defense and precision. He retired undefeated. He cemented his place in history as a master technician. Manny Pacquiao rose from poverty in the Philippines to become a champion in multiple weight classes. His story was not just about winning titles, it was about resilience and global appeal. Boxing today is bigger than ever. Fighters like Canelo Alvarez, Tyson Fury, and Terence Crawford carry the torch. The sport is global with champions from every corner of the world. The rise of women's boxing has also proven that the fighting spirit knows no gender. Claressa Shields and Katie Taylor have shown skill, power, and determination on the world stage. Cultural impact of boxing. What makes boxing powerful is not just the fights, it is the way the sport mirrors society. Each era of boxing reflects the struggles and triumphs of its time. In the early days, boxing symbolized survival and raw human endurance. In the 20th century, boxing was tied to identity, race, politics, and pride. When Joe Louis stepped into the ring, he carried the weight of a nation divided by race. When Muhammad Ali refused the draft, he represented defiance and conviction. When Manny Pacquiao rose to global stardom, he showed the world that greatness could come from the humblest beginnings. Boxing has always been more than punches. It is storytelling through combat. It is personal history written in sweat and scars. It is the roar of the crowd mixed with the silence of a fighter's inner battle. The spirit of boxing. From ancient warriors in Greece to bare-knuckle brawlers in England. From Ali's poetic defiance to today's global champions. Boxing has always been more than sport. It is a story of transformation. It is a coming of age. Boxing grew from brutal survival into discipline, from chaos into craft, from blood sport into artistry. Yet at its core, it has always been about the same thing, the human spirit refusing to back down. Every fighter who steps into the ring carries that spirit, the courage to face fear, the will to endure pain, the heart to keep fighting when the world is watching. Boxing is history. Boxing is culture. Boxing is struggle and triumph. Above all, boxing is the story of us, our battles, our resilience, our fight to rise every time we